item 6 is the one around antisocial behaviour, and again, just to give a little bit of context, so this one, like road safety, when we went out to consultation with the public, around 60% of the respondents actually indicated that antisocial behaviour, along with road safety, were in the top 2 categories. 60% is obviously a big number or proportion of the people that we consulted with. I have been involved in various initiatives. You'll recall the Community Trigger initiative that the government introduced. We were involved in consulting with our communities and local authorities on that, albeit the success or otherwise of that, I have to say, remains to be seen. Also, the recent Your Views survey that we've relaunched in June, again, it's something that we are keen to gather evidence on, and obviously we'll start to rebuild a baseline around those views coming in. And actually, referring again to the Safer Communities Fund, a third of the 430 projects we've funded are actually something to do with tackling antisocial behaviour, and that's over £600,000 worth of funding to groups and projects. So that really just sort of highlights the importance. But also, just to finalise, we also support the commissioning with youth offending teams, for example, around initiatives, Positive Futures. We fund a victim support ASB champion in the Wakefield district, and also we've recently funded some work with the Safer Leeds partnership around antisocial behaviour project work as well. So well involved with that, but clearly now interested to hear about your report update, Andy.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner. You've received the Chief's report in relation to antisocial behaviour, which I'll refer to as ASB if you wouldn't mind. The report outlines our current position in relation to antisocial behaviour, how we use our ASBAT, which is our antisocial behaviour analysis tool, to identify risk and vulnerability. It includes some performance data and specifically deals with a summary of how we're tackling the current nuisance motorcycle incidents that are prevalent across the force. So in relation to sort of performance management, antisocial behaviour is monitored using quite a number of reporting tools that all come together on our force EMIS system, that's the Electronic Management Information System, so that all our sort of senior leaders have at their fingertips a summary and then sort of more granular detail around what's happening in terms of antisocial behaviour. That provides data in relation to volume, number of recorded incidents, finalisation rates and the types of incidents, and that can then be broken down into district level analysis and sort of 6-monthly repeat rates as well, so it gives us some insight into what's happening. ASB victim satisfaction is also monitored through satisfaction surveys, and that information is used in local accountability meetings when the Deputy Chief Constable and the Assistant Chief Constable go out to speak to district commanders and their teams around how they're tackling matters. So in terms of the local structure, ASB is a key priority, and it is a responsibility of both police and partners to tackle it effectively. Each of our 5 local authorities have an antisocial behaviour partnership hub, which is aimed at tackling ASB and involves partners such as the local authority, housing providers, environmental services, victim support, etc. Wherever possible, these are co-located, but effectively they are all joined in terms of integrated services to deliver a partnership response to ASB and consider whether ASB powers or problem-solving tools need to be applied to reported incidents. A main focus for all of the hubs is early identification and intervention, specifically where victims are believed to have a vulnerability. In terms of ASB legislation, this was amended under the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act 2014, which came into force in March 2015. It brought some significant changes and reduced the available powers from 19 down to 6. The initial uptake of the powers was relatively low around, I think, our understanding and some misunderstandings between police and legal around how those powers could be implemented. and that did affect how effective we were at using the legislation. However, we've conducted a review of that, and the learning is about to be rolled out to districts so we can ensure that we're making greater use of all the range of ASB powers. Once that review is completed, then the Force Performance Improvement Unit will provide feedback to districts, and we will oversee the follow-up actions that fall from that in terms of an action plan. Mentioned earlier.
Sorry, Andy. Could I also see the outcome of that?
Of course.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah.
So in terms of ASBAT, the Antisocial Behaviour Analysis Tool, that was a system that we developed a number of years ago to help us review all our ASB-related incidents, identify ongoing issues, highlight repeat or vulnerable victims, and the level of risk that they faced through an evaluation using the National Decision-Making Model. And that was all recorded on NICE, which is our corporate records management system. What we did in late 2015 was test compliance. What we found out was that districts were no longer fully completing or using ASBAT. In fact, a lot were developing their own local processes. So that triggered a force-wide review of the antisocial behaviour, the ASBAT system, and we've developed a new streamlined version which was launched late in November 2016. Again, from feedback from districts, we've identified some limitations and issues, and we've now got a new system that's currently being developed which is going to be linked onto our Corvus system. Corvus being the corporate database we use to house all our management information. So that will be a much more improved bespoke system that we're going to use. We also use a neighbourhood profiler, which is functionality that's built into Corvus, and we're just about to release that actually. That will take information from other corporate systems like Niche, which is our crime recording system, WebStorm, which is the command and control system, and provide real-time information and analysis about specific beat areas, so it will allow us to focus in on real time about issues that are occurring, which will make us much more timely in our response to ASB. There is Appendix A, which gives quite a lot of detail around ASB incidents, types, locations and repeat rates. But what the data does reflect is that there's been a slight increase in recorded ASB incidents, up 2.1% since the same period in 2016, which reverses the 1.8% reduction we saw the previous year in 2015 into 16. So that's obviously worrying that we're seeing a 2% increase. What we are seeing though is that there have been reductions in ASB incidents in Bradford, which went down 4.1%, and in Kirklees, which has gone down 7.3% compared to the same period in 2016. However, the remaining three districts have seen an increase, particularly Calderdale and Leeds, who have seen increases in 11.3% and 12.1% respectively. Wakefield's seen a slight increase of 1.9% compared to the same period in 2016. When we break that down, we see that some incidents, for example, fireworks and snowballing offences have reduced significantly by almost 60%, but they are relatively specific to times of the year, and we can target those through proactive activity, which is the result of this. But more worryingly, we're seeing a significant increase in nuisance motorcycles and quad bikes, which have increased by just over 20% since 2015-16. And the proportion of ASB incidents recorded as nuisance motorcycle bikes, quad bikes and motorcycles increased from 13 to 16%, so it's quite a significant slice of the ASB pie in that sense. Predominantly ASB is youth related, which comprises 39% of all recorded ASB, which is slightly increased from the previous year at 37%. So what we're seeing is that the type of ASB that's on the increase is nuisance use of motorcycles and quads, and the population who are more inclined to be involved in it are the younger people. We've seen a very slight increase in terms of repeat incidents. That's gone up by 1% to 23%. And there are some marginal sort of slight increases and slight decreases across the districts. In terms of managing public perception and satisfaction, we have previously used data from your Office Commissioner from the OPCC Perception Survey, as well as Home Office Satisfaction Survey. Obviously now you've moved to the Your Views Survey, which I think will give us more granular and more improved data. We're waiting obviously for that data set to arrive so we can start to understand that. But what we do know is that overall satisfaction in relation to ASB has declined by 1 percentage point, with similar reductions across all the service areas, with the exception of treatment by police officers and staff. So what we know is that people are still as satisfied as well with the treatment, but things like speed of arrival, ease of contact, etc. is seen a slight decrease there. Just to focus in a little bit on how we're tackling nuisance motor vehicles and ASBs, I covered in the Roads Police Initiative the work we're doing on the steer side in Bradford around antisocial use of vehicles, but certainly in relation to quads, and motorbikes. Each of the 5 districts have a similar sort of problem profile and similar methods in tackling through intelligence-led operations, proactive policing, prompt response times and investment in specialist motorcycle teams. Bradford, Kirklees, Leeds and Wakefield all have dedicated off-road motorcycle teams. Calderdale currently has no specific dedicated team but has successfully secured community safety partnership funding to purchase motorcycles and train officers in their use, so that capability is just being developed. Because there's been an increase in motorcycle-related offending in Wakefield specifically, which went up 41%, they've really focused in on this as a priority. They've trialled the use of an offender tagging agent, which essentially is like a DNA spray that you would, as an offender goes past on a motorbike, it's a bit like smart water that we use for burglary. It will be sprayed on the offender in the vehicle, so we can subsequently trace them and arrest them. That's seen some success. We've currently got an offender who's been arrested and currently waiting trial. And that's obviously one of the innovations, but that's in amongst other things that the districts are trying to achieve. And that's pretty much a summary of where we are in relation to ASB, Commissioner.
Right, thank you. Okay, so page 4. So you mentioned about the district figures there, and it was really what are we doing to try and address the repeat victim rates, particularly in Bradford, Leeds and Calderdale, where they are increasing.
So as I mentioned, the partnership hubs all currently use ASBAT and will use the refinement and development of ASBAT to identify repeat victims, and these can be either repeat calls to the police or through the local authority. We share data to ensure we've got a rich picture of who the repeat victims are. When repeat victims are identified, members of the district partnership hub will complete a referral, so we can identify agencies who can provide support and advice to victims, and that will also include referral to local neighbourhood teams who will conduct a reassurance visit, and then followed by an individual assessment to determine what problem-solving work we need to instigate to address that. And this follows the refreshed perspective on policing on problem-solving that we launched in November 2016. So we've got a partnership response around revisits, proper individual risk assessments and signposting to appropriate agencies. And then in addition to that, around ASB, police will also involve crime reduction and target hardening techniques, high visibility patrols. We will use our policing powers around antisocial behaviour powers, for example, criminal behaviour orders or public space protection notices, and court-imposed convictions. And it's through that collective work together that we look to try and reduce the number of repeat victims.
So the neighbourhood policing review, which is currently underway,
Yes.
Are those arrangements being looked at as well as part of that review?
Yes, so
yeah.
the Force Performance Improvement Unit are collectively looking at, they've done the review of policing powers, which is anticipated to have reported within 4 weeks. That's about, and so that is being fed into Superintendent Marianne Huison's overall review of neighbourhood policing, so we get the structure right, the process right, the policy right, and then the neighbourhood offer an integrated partnership working right.
Because obviously each of the local authorities will have differing sort of commitments, if you like, into what they're putting into those neighbourhood hubs, and it's really just trying to get that level of consistency, I suppose.
Well, the Chief's given us a really clear steer around. She would want to see a consistent and corporate approach to neighbourhood policing, so it's not a postcode lottery. There's our neighbourhood offer is the same across all 5 districts. There will always be scope for minor tweaks and adjustments to tailor it to local need, but actually what we want is essentially a corporate response and a corporate approach to neighbourhood policing.
Yeah, okay. So page 5, and you touched on it, Andy. I mean, obviously, it is concerning to see the big increase in motorcycle-related incidents, particularly in the Wakefield district, given some of the horrific incidents that we know about and we're aware of. So, you've talked about the offender tagging agents, but what other things are we doing at the district level to try and educate and change behaviours?
Okay, well, I mentioned obviously in the report specific targeted patrols, rapid response times, etc. But in addition to that, specifically at Wakefield, They've introduced an initiative called Don't Take the Risk, Don't Take a Life programme, which is aimed at primary and secondary schools to raise awareness of the dangers of illegal motorcycle use with young people, because we do recognise that the earlier we can educate people, the better chance we've got of them not seeing riding a motorbike off-road as being something that's socially acceptable. That's a partnership-based approach, and it engages local authority, housing and the fire service. It's not police in isolation, it's all the partnerships working together. And Wakefield's also engaged with local offenders and young people through work-based placements to raise awareness of events. So we're trying to get in early to educate, and then when we have got young people who have even been involved, we're looking at workplace assessments and workplace interventions as well.
And you mentioned about the funding that Calderdale have secured, so that's potentially funding that I've passported to them. But I'm very happy for it to be used in that way. Have you any idea what the time frame is on that being established? I don't specifically, Commissioner, but I can sort it out and get that through to your office. Okay, and Steerside in Bradford, sorry, I'm going back to the previous report, did you say that the tackling of the sort of quad bike off-road stuff is part of the Steerside?
Well, Steerside is tackling antisocial use of vehicles in Bradford. So it does incorporate that sort of work, but it's primarily aimed at antisocial use on the roads, uninsured vehicles, etc. But it doesn't close its mind to the use of bikes, etc.
It's just that when I've been in Bradford, and I know others have reported this, that they have, it's not uncommon to see quad bikes on the open road and causing a real danger and nuisance.
And of course, quad bikes can be legally driven on the road, and part of Steerside would be to target the antisocial use. So we do have powers to seize vehicles that are being used in an antisocial manner in certain circumstances. So it's been really successfully deployed in that regard. Right.
And then page 7 touches on it's Appendix B, the satisfaction figures which you referred to. It was really around when we anticipate we might see some victim satisfaction improvement, particularly in terms of actions taken by the police and working with the CSPs to manage expectations.
I think the first point to explore is whilst we've seen satisfaction reduced by 5%, we haven't seen dissatisfaction increase by 5%. Whilst it has increased by 2.7%, there's been a proportion of people who've just moved into the neither satisfied nor dissatisfied category, so they're taking a more neutral stance, which in itself isn't a success, and we recognise that. But it's probably not as bleak a picture as believing that people are genuinely dissatisfied, although there is an increase there. So we do recognise that is something to work on. And we do recognise that satisfaction has fallen from 82.5% down to 77.6%. So this is, whilst these are relatively high satisfaction figures, we're really concerned that they're going down by 5% almost. So we've introduced a number of changes to our existing practices about how we monitor and track our victim support and victim liaison. We use the VCOPS, which is the Victims Code of Practice system that we had for tracking victims of crime. We're applying that into the ASB world. We can deploy it on the mobile handheld devices that you've been able to fund for us. So officers now have access to the VCOPS system whilst they're out and about and can update systems, and it prompts them through the drop-down menus about when to contact victims and update. So we're using technology to support us whilst we're out in communities rather than back in the police station in that respect. We're also obviously looking at better use of telephone surveys to gain a better understanding of satisfaction. We're looking at broader types, a range of crime types, and a survey that will allow us to differentiate between people who've been dealt with over the telephone, because some instances we do have to deal with over the telephone in terms of managing demand, and those that have had actual intervention by officers, so we can better understand the differences in those and apply and understand where the learning may come from that. And also we're just reviewing the work of our district control rooms who deploy police officers and PCSOs to these incidents, because we just have a concern that we might be over-promising at that early stage about how we might resolve an incident and then not being able to deliver in that sense because it's not appropriate. So what we want to make sure is that we're not at first blush promising an attendance when actually we shouldn't be attending, because it's something we can properly deal with by reference to other agencies. So we're just reviewing that we aren't over-promising, and that's an important part of that work. Once all that's works, we've got some review work ongoing around that. Once that's completed, each district will be given a summary of its performance in those areas, which again will be managed through the local accountability meetings, and then shared with their respective community safety partnerships so that they can collectively work on that. And whilst I haven't got a firm timescale, because that work has been and is being rolled out now, we hope to see improvements late 2017, very early into 2018.
And I guess some of that comes under the banner of keeping people updated with their whatever the incident or case may be. Yeah.
That is typically our Achilles heel around that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks so much. That was the last question on that report. So thank you for giving those reports, Andy.